Well, hello and good evening, everybody. Happy Sunday. I hope you're doing well wherever you are. I'm really excited about tonight. We are going to be diving deep into segments 1 through 5 and really digging deeply into these different segments to make sure that you are absolutely prepared for your Colorado Trail through hike or maybe segment hike, however you plan on doing it. I want to make sure that you are in a really great spot to be ready to tackle all of the unique challenges, particularly this year coming up. We're going to have some really interesting challenges, but it's going to be a great year. It really is going to be a dynamite year there on the trail. So before we get too far into this, I want to give you all sort of a picture of what we're doing or kind of the idea. So many of you may already know that if you've watched any of my videos, that I started about 2.5, 3 years ago, just making segment videos. So segment 1, 2, 3, and each of the different segments offering some really practical ground level tips for tackling the trail, making sure that you're in a good position to be ready to get out there and have your best chance of success on the Colorado Trail. In doing so, it was very early in my YouTubing career, if you're going to call it that. And I went back and reviewed them, and I think the tips are still sound, but I also think the quality could have been quite a bit better. So, knowing now what I know about editing and production and such, I want to make sure that I went back and kind of retouched up some of these different videos and the like. So, anyway, it's great to see you all here. Thank you all for joining. I see a lot of people are kind of starting to pop in, and it's good to see you there. Unlikely Hiker, Melissa, Brennan, great to see you as well. Hashtag over there at Tangent Trails. Thanks for joining in as well. I really can't wait for your Womenoosh adventure there on the sort of later half of the Colorado Trail. You'll be joining in on that. So I'm excited to see those videos. Now, I want to start here as we have a lot of folks kind of making their way through. Hey there, Elderberry. It's good to see you as well. And also good to see you, Girl Plus Dog Adventures. I think we might have met once or twice. So nice to see you there in the chat. Now, as we have people kind of signing on and joining in here, I want to start with a couple of sort of tips just in general for backpacking the Colorado Trail, or maybe even backpacking in general, that I think could be really useful for a lot of folks. I think for me personally, they would have been really helpful to have known prior to starting my backpacking experience. But, sometimes you just have to learn things as you go, and that's okay too. That's really one of the big pieces of information that I want to share with you is none of this is gospel. None of this is written in stone. Every time you go through a backpacking trip, you're going to have new experiences. You're going to learn a lot. And there's no right or wrong way to do it as long as you're following leave no trace principles and you are being safe when you're out there. So make sure that you figure out what works for you. So some people like hiking a certain way, maybe ultralight. Some people like being comfortable and taking longer time and stretches out there. So make sure that you are hiking your own hike and being welcoming to those people who maybe hike a little bit differently than you. There's space for all of us in the great outdoors. Now, one thing that is important, at least in terms of through hiking, is to really think here about this idea of comfort. So I mentioned that a little while ago. And as you're preparing for your hike, philosophically speaking, I recommend focusing on comfort on trail rather than at camp. And what I mean by that is, so often when I was first getting into backpacking, what I did was I thought, all right, how am I going to be comfortable at camp? Where do I get a good chair? How do I make sure my feet are comfortable? What about maybe a fire, some s'mores? I had all this stuff, maybe a book I wanted to take with me. And the truth is that might have made me more comfortable at camp, but I only spent on a backpacking trip of a Colorado Trail through hike type. I only spent maybe 2 hours awake at camp before it was time for bed, but I'd spend 8 to 12 hours on trail hiking. And so I focused all my energy being comfortable in 2 hours, and that made me much less comfortable in the bigger part of the day that I'm awake. So just knowing that focusing on comfort is important. I won't deny that, but also making sure that you are comfortable while you are on trail is really important there. It's good to see you there, Jasper, trail name Jasper. I think you were taken off on was it the Bruce you were doing there, Jasper? So I'm sorry if I haven't caught that video just yet, but excited to see that. And Mad Hippies are here. Miller, I think you might actually make an appearance in one of the videos that I use here. So if you all haven't checked out Mad Hippies Life, they did the CT back in, I think it was 2019, and made just a beautiful series. And it's really nice. And it's a great one to just have on while you're getting ready, packing up everything. It's really dynamite from there. So One question that's really specific to a lot of folks, especially if you're coming in from out of state, is what to do about fuel. And every summer, it seems like people get word that the REI is out of fuel or they're running low. And that's really true. And so I have a couple of quick ideas here that are useful. Lee, it's great to see you there as well. So for fuel, there's a store in Denver. I think it might just be a marketing issue on their part, but it's called Farrell. And I went by there last year when everybody was running out at REI and they had mountains of fuel. So Farrell is a good place to know. I like REI. This is no shade on REI, but Farrell is a great company to just have in mind for a lot of those backpacking items. I really like their stuff. Or consider doing without fuel until Breckenridge. The nice thing about that first 100 miles, as we're going to see today, is that it's generally pretty low in elevation and pretty hot. So if you go out and plan for going stoveless that first stretch, so doing peanut butter and tortillas and breakfast bars, that kind of thing, you can really do a lot of great mileage that way without necessarily getting kind of buried in the search for fuel when you get to Denver. It's a really good way to go. It's not necessarily lighter to go stoveless. In my experience, I took a lot heavier stuff. So, but it is worth it to consider if it's going to be really difficult to find a $5 can of $5 can of fuel here. As Elderberry points out here, Sierra on Parker Road has fuel and the other locations do as well. So Sierra Trading Post, that is a great tip as well. And here we've got Brennan. It's great to see you as well. I hope this is useful for you as well. Heading out there, getting your gear in the mail. That's really exciting stuff when those packages start showing up. So I can feel the excitement. I'm getting excited for you all as well. Let's take a look here at my last piece of tip, just general backpacking tip before we dive deeply into those segments here. This one is just really crucial for a lot of folks, is know that the first half of the trail can take much longer than the last half. So as we get into these segments, if you have sort of a timeline where you're saying I have, say, 35 days to do this, and you've done the math, and that means you need to make X number of miles per day, it's okay if you're behind mileage on the first half of the trail, because you'll make up those miles later on. Segments 18 and 19, for example, have about 100 feet of elevation gain per mile throughout 27 miles. A lot of people make up a lot of distance on those segments. So just know that if you start slower than you think, that's okay as well. And that's going to be sort of an important thing mentally. So a lot of people don't get really discouraged early, because the early stages of the hike are very difficult. Make no mistake, a lot of times people look ahead and they think the San Juans are really tough. They look to the Collegiate West. They think that's really tough. They are hard for sure, but also these first segments have a very different type of difficulty, specifically because your body isn't quite adjusted yet. Your shoulders will be sore. If you're like Brennan, just getting in a lot of that gear, you're going to find quite a bit of the gear is just not necessarily fitting. So if you think about the last time you rode a bike for the first time in a couple of years and you were kind of saddle sore, your whole body will kind of get a little bit of that saddle soreness as well. Here we got Tim Mason here, cold soaked for the first time in his life. Not bad at all. And absolutely, I think that using a smart water bottle is a great idea with a little bit of some coffee. They make a cold brew coffee that's now freeze dried. That's a really good option for a lot of folks. If you are resistant to going stoveless or cold soaking because of your coffee taste, which is typically the number one objection people have, that's okay as well. You can probably do some cold soaking, or you can do that iced coffee as well. So let's dive right in here and let's talk a little bit. Actually, let's go to the Mad Hippies. Heat in segment 2 is hands down one of the hardest segments. I agree entirely. I would put segment 2 in the top 5 hardest segments, not because of elevation gain, not because of sort of distance. It's hard because of the heat. And we're going to dive deeply into that one. But I think you're spot on, Miller and Debbie, that it is just such a difficult segment. So let's go ahead and start diving in. I'm going to mark these chapters for everybody. And actually, YouTube kind of marks them as well. The other thing that I just want to be transparent about is that I do plan to sort of chop these up and post them as separate videos as we go through the next few weeks. So if you just want 1 or 2 segments, you can watch those separately. So know that that's kind of coming down the pike. Obviously, if you watch this and you don't need that information, then that's fine. But if you want to go back and review it, then I wanted to make sure it was easy for you. So without further ado. All right, let's dive right in here to segment one. Now, segment one is a really interesting segment in a lot of different ways. It's 16.8 miles, it's 2,800 feet of elevation up and 2,200 feet of elevation down. Now, those numbers might not mean a lot to you, especially if this is your first through hike. So, let me give you sort of my standard rule, and that is the threshold for where hikes really start getting difficult is at about 300 feet of elevation gain per mile or descent as well. Many of you folks, if you're like me, the descents can be just as hard as the ascents. And so it can be really challenging, but know that it's that 300 feet per mile threshold where I think that's going to be getting into the tougher area of difficulty. Now, where segment one gets really challenging is it starts in Waterton Canyon for the first 6 miles. You only gain about 100 feet of elevation. And I'll show you a video here shortly. And it's basically a road walk for those first 6 miles. And when you're doing the math in this section to figure out how difficult it is, that 2,800 feet is really 2,700 feet in the last 10 miles. So it's all kind of consolidated in that last climb. And so what we need here is a really specific kind of approach to make sure that you are ready and sort of cognizant of the challenges. Because if you just look at Waterton Canyon and you think, oh man, that's easy, that's a piece of cake, and you don't pay attention to how that segment will affect the rest of the segment, you can end up with some really difficult challenges. So let's take a look here. What I did is I made a little bit of a sort of montage of each segment. I didn't want to make a video that gives away everything in the segment. So I didn't want to lose those folks who want everything to be a surprise, but I want you to get a little bit of a taste of it. So here's a little bit of a video, and I think I'll be talking over it, so forgive me for that. But this is our segment one. And you start off here and you head off into Waterton Canyon. I want you to notice here that it's really flat, but also that sun exposure. This was super early in the morning. Actually, Miller from Mad Hippies took me out there and dropped me off. And so he might be in this video. I know that there were a couple of times when I think he showed up, but it's really, really flat, really gentle. And then you come to the dam, and then all of the climbing starts hitting you right away. So you see here, this is where the climb starts, and you start making your way through. And I think that that might be Double Dip up there. She hiked with me a little bit as well. And then you kind of hit this sun exposure area, and you see where you start to descend, and the Platte River is down there in that basin or the valley below. And this spot here is really important. This is the campsite by the South Platte River, and another one there. It's a little spot, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment or two, because those are really, really important areas. So basically what we have there is sort of a taste of what those 16 miles look like. And here, Lee, you're spot on. We're going to talk quite a bit about this. The climb right after Bear Creek is really difficult. That's actually, you're hitting the nail on the head. And so let's talk a little bit about what I put in my first tips, and then we'll jump ahead to what my new tips are for this segment, or my additional tips is probably a better way to say this. So 3 years ago, I offered these tips, and I still think they hold true. Number one is watch the sun in Waterton Canyon. And what that means is try your best to stay out of the sun. So use a sun umbrella if you have it, wear your sun hoodie, make sure that you're paying attention to that, and drinking a lot more water than you may even think is necessary, because basically that segment's not difficult. So if you're not forcing yourself to drink water, you then end up starting that big climb and you'll be dehydrated, because 6 miles will typically take most hikers about 2 to 3 hours, give or take. And so you just want to be really careful for that. I mentioned to people they should consider camping at Bear Creek, and that's 8.7 miles in. I still think that's a really good option. Just know that if you do decide to camp there at 8.7 miles in at Bear Creek, there are very few campsites available, so you will want to get there early. You're going to hear our start early quite a bit today. So starting early to get there to that first really reasonable campsite at Bear Creek is a great idea, especially if you are sort of testing out some new gear or not sure exactly how things are going to go. And then just be aware also of the people coming in with dogs will be coming in right at the end of Waterton Canyon as well. Dodsworth, thank you for those kind words. And also here, this is an important one for those of you with pups. Starting at the Indian Creek Trailhead, makes it over to Lenny's Rest and bypasses Waterton. That's also a great alternative for a lot of folks if you don't want to do that road walk. I think that's just a great option for a lot of folks to just see a different route. And I'm told that it's really beautiful. It's one of the few stretches of the trail that I've not done, but definitely worth it as well. Now, let's go back over here and talk a little bit about that, where you get to the dam. And my first new tip for you all here. What, did I get them all? I'm sorry. And at the South Platte, remember I showed you the video there of the campsites. And if you do plan to camp at the South Platte, which is 16.8 miles in, you need to get there early because there are only a handful of good spots there. You can end up finding a spot there in a pinch, but you'll end up sleeping on a slope. And that's a really tough one for a couple of reasons. When we get into segment 2, you're going to need to start that segment early to make it through. So if you plan on staying at the South Platte, get there early. Do not camp on the other side of the South Platte where there are signs saying no camping. We want to be good stewards of the Colorado Trail, so make sure that you are being respectful of the private landowners in that area as well. Now, I did mention this one just a moment ago. There are a lot of bighorn sheep there in the south, in the Waterton Canyon. Watch for bighorn sheep, but specifically, this is my super secret tip. It's not really that secret, but when you get to the dam and you're looking head on at the dam, look to the left up in the cliffs and just stare at it for a little bit. Give it 3 minutes and watch for movement. Every time I've been there, I've seen bighorn sheep there on that cliff. So if you're looking for wildlife, you can see them. There's also a pretty reasonable chance you've already seen some bighorn sheep in the canyon. I've seen herds of them there. If you go look at Mad Hippie's Life at their shorts, they've got a really cool video in the canyon of a couple of bighorn sheep smashing heads together. Really, really cool video as well. So just check that out. It's a nice way to kind of mark the end of the Waterton Canyon and get kind of get a view of things. And you're probably going to stop there anyway because there's a picnic shelter with a roof and a bathroom there. So a lot of people choose to stop right there and just kind of hang out anyway. So as you head over there, check that out. And as Elderberry points out, there are newborns now, and so there are a bunch of baby rams there in the area and ewes and such. So that's a really cool one. Just to see some of that wildlife. The canyon actually, as much traffic as it sees, gets a lot of wildlife in there. I've seen people have seen bears. I've seen lots of snakes, of course. There have been a couple of deer, and I think somebody even said they saw a mountain lion there once upon a time. I've not seen a mountain lion there, but I would like to. So let's talk a little bit about if you stay at Bear Creek. Bear Creek is a spot where, as the name implies, there has been some bear activity in the past. Just be really cautious of your food. Make sure you're taking care of it. Bears are nothing really to be worried about so long as you're practicing good bear safety etiquette. So hanging your food, using a bear canister. I personally don't like Ursax, and if you're interested in why I don't like Ursax, you can let me know. You can send me a message on Instagram at Backcountry Champion, and we can talk that over. But suffice it to say, I've seen a number of folks who've had their Ursax destroyed by bears, and I mean destroyed on the Colorado Trail, specifically at the base of Hope Pass. I've seen the Ursax just get absolutely shredded. So if you do take an Ursac, I still encourage you, especially at these high traffic areas with new hikers, go ahead and hang that up and take care of your food. I don't believe you'd be in any real danger still, but I do believe that you would be real bummed out if you had to go back and start the hike over again because you had to ditch and go to Denver and get a resupply of food because your food is now in the belly of a black bear somewhere in that South Platte River area. Okay, so let's talk here for a moment about my final tip. I'll take a little sip of water, and that will really mark us here as we're going into this last tip. I'm going to listen to my own advice. Is go easy. Pay attention to your feet and hydration. This is more than a marathon, right? You're talking about the equivalent of 20 marathons if you're going all the way to Durango. Take your time. Pay attention to your hydration. Take lots of breaks, lots of snacks. Even if you're not hungry, still start feeding yourself snacks. It's really likely you're going to lose your appetite in the first couple of days, and it's a really important thing to keep that food and energy up and making sure your morale stays high and making sure your hydration's up so that you don't get cramps and the like, because cramps can lead to further injury. Now, by way of your feet, this is where making sure you are really paying attention to your body and feeling for hot spots. So if you feel sort of a hot spot developing on your foot, you know what I'm talking about if you've ever felt it. If you don't know what a hot spot is, just think of it just like it sounds. If you feel a spot on your foot starting to feel hot, stop, put some Leukotape on it. If you've watched any of my videos, you know that I love Leukotape. Put some Leukotape on it. Make sure you're taking care of that. The other thing that I'd recommend for blisters, and this is sort of my hottest take, the most one of the quirks that I developed over the years, I switched from big boots to trail runners and trekking poles. So trekking poles and trail runners, I don't have any ankle injuries at that point. What it allows me to do then is to carry a fresh pair of socks for every single day on trail. So I typically will have a town day every 6 days at most. So I take 6 pairs of socks with me. They pack down real small. Hey everybody, sorry about that. Our internet is bananas here. Hopefully, it doesn't happen again. But we have some storms here in Chicago, so we'll do our best to hang in here. Appreciate your patience. Sorry, Jody, I didn't mean for that to freeze there. So let's go back over this one here, making it's a really great way to go. Make sure that you break them in before you start that trail. That's a really, really helpful one for making sure that you're in great shape moving forward from there. So just take really good care of your feet. You're gonna need them for the next 500 miles. And know that this segment here is a challenge, specifically as someone pointed out. You'll have to remind me here. There's a section right after Bear Creek. It's about a mile stretch where the trail gets really hard. So take your time climbing that incline. It's really steep. You're going to be fine. You just need to give yourself more time and be patient with it. Take really good care of your feet. Give yourself extra time. It's the number one resource you have, and enjoy it. Remember, this is really it's the adventure of a lifetime. So don't be discouraged. Know that there are going to be some bumps and bruises along the way. You're going to be fine. And then you are going to make your way into segment 2. So let's go ahead and start talking a little bit about that segment 2. I'll give us a little bit of an intro here. All right, so segment 2, everybody. This one it's a segment that is hard to love, right? And it is a segment that is beautiful in some really interesting ways here. It is 11.7 miles. It's about 2,500 feet of elevation gain, and about I put elevation up and up. Let's go ahead and change that one here. Up and up, up and down. How's that, everybody? All right. So here's what we have. So segment 2 is 11.7 miles. It's got about 2,500 feet of elevation gain, about 800 feet of elevation descent over the course of that 11.7 miles. It is a segment that is really exposed. So right away, there's no water from the South Platte at the very start of it, all the way to the firehouse, which is almost at the very end. So it's about 10.1 miles to the firehouse. And so it's just absolutely blisteringly hot. But here's the deal. You can do it. And if you do it the right way, it's a segment that is very easy to love, but it's going to require you to break your patterns probably. And what I mean by that is you're going to have to wake up early. And when I say early, whatever you think is an early time, take 2 hours off of it and start that time. And the reason is that you want to get those miles in as early as possible before the sun starts pummeling, because the sun will really add quite a bit of weight to your shoulders. It will really exhaust you quickly. I know a couple of people had to be pulled off by the fire truck last year, and it is absolutely, it's just really, really tough. So let's talk about the tips that I gave in the first video years and years ago. I want to make sure that those are here, and I'm going to talk about some of my new updated tips here as well. Starting early, that one's really important. Carry lots of water. That's absolutely critical, especially if you plan to dry camp. So if you go in a little bit early, maybe you pass South Platte and hike a couple miles in, carrying lots of water is really, really important. And take a sun umbrella. As you see there, hashtag from Tangent Trails mentions it's umbrella time, and you're absolutely right. An umbrella is a game changer. If you can afford a good sun umbrella, I encourage it. If you can't, then just get any umbrella you can from the Dollar General. Doesn't matter. Something to give you a little bit of shade will make a huge difference. there was a forest fire that passed through there in I think 1996, and it burned up all the trees, and they're just not growing back. I don't know exactly the biology of it, or the botany or whatever, but basically it's really, really tough. And here, you don't want to end up like Salmon points out here. You don't want to have to drink your own urine. So make sure you carry a lot of water. And if you do it this way, if you carry a lot of water, you start early and take a sun umbrella, you're going to be able to really see a special part of the Colorado Trail for what it is, really special, right? It's really unique. There are the chair rocks there, some really interesting rock formations. Let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of videos that I have for you here to give you a sense of sort of what we're looking at. And I want you to pay attention specifically to how much of this is exposed. And then I'll show you a little bit of a drone shot. And I really like the drone footage. So here, you notice right away you head right into this area where you do have some tree coverage, but not a whole lot. And it's the sun just kind of pushes through. You're lower in elevation. You get a lot of those conifers, those ponderosa pines. And then right there, this is the trail runs all the way through there and between those trees in the distance. So it's all very, very exposed. I mean, we're talking about that sun will come straight down on your shoulders. And there's some ways that you can approach it here. Girl Plus Dog recommends going Nobo, and it's a lot easier with dogs, especially because you'll be going down that 2,500 feet and only up 800, which I think is a really great route to go as well. So make sure that that one is up there, and you basically get the most exposure out of the way early. It's just a beautiful segment if you do it the right way, and that's a great option, especially if you live in the Denver area. You can start chipping away some of these segments early, so that when you get started in full with the rest of your hike, you can kind of have them knocked out of the way. Now, I did take a drone shot here of one of the campsites. This is basically if you started segment 2 and you moved into, say you get to the South Platte, there's not a good campsite, and you push forward a couple of miles. This is basically where you'll end up. There is a good campsite. It's all dry, as I mentioned. There's no water, but you've got some really cool areas here. So notice again, a lot of exposure, a lot of that red clay that kind of comes with being lower in elevation there in Colorado. Some folks will set up. There are a couple of ridge lines. Definitely no fires. But it's got a segment, kind of a different kind of beauty for Colorado, and you'll start to make your trammeling in this segment as well. You'll start to meet some of those folks that you're going to end up hiking with in the long haul. So just a really cool segment. I mean, it really is, but it's hard to love. And so started early, take a lot of water. Let's talk a little bit about some of my updated tips and some of the ways that I might approach it. This is something I did last year's. I dry camped in the trees, and I did it the year prior, and I really like this idea. If you are able, 17 miles through segment 1 is tough, and then you've got a big climb on the front end of segment 2, but then it kind of levels out. So if you do decide to push in, go in a couple of miles, find a good camp spot, dry camp in the trees. And dry camping, for those of you who are new, just means you're camping where there's not a water source. So you're going to have to take your water in. But this is a great way to go because you can chip away some of those hotter miles early or later, and then wake up early and then have a really good full run at that fire station to make sure you get there as early as possible. So dry camping is a good idea if you're able, especially if you stop there in segment 1 at Bear Creek and then you go in. That's a great idea. Fill up at the South Platte, camel up, take as much water as you can, and head into segment 2, dry camp somewhere in there, and then get an early run as well. Let's talk a little bit about the firehouse. So the firehouse is an important one, and it's a resource we've been able to tap into in the Colorado Trail community for quite a while. And this one is really important that we keep taking care of it. So if you're able, take a few dollars to make a donation to the firehouse. There is a little box for you to leave some money because we use their water for free. The firehouse, they're really great. They're generous with their water. They've got a couple of benches set up for hikers. So if you have the means, leave them a few dollars, and that will help us ensure that hikers in the future are able to keep using this facility. What's also nice about the firehouse, especially if you get there early in the morning, is that the shade, the spigot for the water, if you sit by it, you're in the shade. So there's a lot of shade kind of in that area. Now, when you do get to the firehouse, remember there are people who live there. So be quiet, or at least don't be screaming and making yourself crazy. But also, don't put if you need to dry out your tents, don't put them in the road because they use the driveway. So spread them out on the grass, keep them out kind of spread around. A couple of times I've been there and the firefighters have had to come out and ask people to move their gear for drying, and they've been really kind about it. But you have to imagine that it's it's crazy making if you spend every day going out there and asking hikers to just move things out of the way. So taking your gear and putting it preemptively where it's not going to be in the way is a really good idea. But it is also a great spot to dry your gear before you head over there into segment 3. And then I mentioned this a few times, but appreciate the harsh beauty of the segment. And there are a couple of ways to do this. If you're a reader, let me start that over. Read Land of Little Rain by Mary Austin before you go out there. It's a very short book, but it's a great one for starting to appreciate what it means to be in a dry, arid environment. There's also a really terrific book about the Colorado Trail called Uphill Both Ways by Andrea Alani, and it's terrific. And she has a great take on that segment specifically. And she hiked the trail the year that the burn happened. So she's been able to see sort of both ways the segment 2 is evolved over the years. So spend a little time, look for the flora and fauna that you're not going to see elsewhere. So sometimes you'll see some really cool cacti, you'll see some great grasses. It is beautiful in some really harsh ways, and it's just a neat one. I don't mean to sound too hippie, but obviously you're hiking the trail, make the best of it, check out some of that really unique landscape. As long as you are in good shape by way of hydration and sun, you're going to be able to enjoy it on some level. And that's a really important one here because that segment 2 just has, it's a challenge. It's just so hard. Now, without further ado, let's click over here. And here, let's talk about Mad Hippies before we switch over. Stay the course at the end of segment 2 to get to the firehouse. Don't go off trail. There's a gully in between. And that's really important too. So don't build those social trails as you go to that firehouse. Make sure you're, again, taking care of that resource and not creating a problem so that we lose that resource in the years to come. All right, let's talk here. Okay, so segment 3 is just a terrific segment. It's where you start getting into some trees. It has some really beautiful stream crossings. You're going to get back into some rock formations. If you're a geology buff, this is a great segment. There's some cool things happening there in segment 3. Let's talk a little bit about the beta. We're dealing with about a 12.5 mile segment, 2,000 feet up and 1,500 feet down. That's not a difficult stretch by way of elevation, gain and fall, although there are a couple of areas where you hit a lot of climbing really quickly near the Buffalo Creek, for example. At the end, you're going to have a pretty steep climb and sort of a relentless climb, so be ready for that. But overall, it's a pretty approachable segment of the trail. Now, let's talk a little bit about what my tips were back in the day when I first started making these videos. And I said here, first, there is a bathroom at the little scraggy trailhead at the very beginning. So if you are still getting used to pooping in the woods, this is a good one. You can kind of hold it till you get there and use their bathroom. It's typically in good shape. This is also a super, super popular mountain biking area. And so you need to watch for those mountain bikers. Generally speaking, they're pretty respectful. You do have the right of way, but if you watch the way mountain bikers typically behave, you wouldn't know it. And so you've got these mountain bikers coming through. So you'll want to make a lot of noise. If you're with people, talk the whole way through so that they can hear you. If they come around a blind corner, keep an eye out for them. And there is a spot at Tramway Creek, there are a couple of spots there that are really good camping spots. And especially if you dry camp the night before, you will welcome the water resources being so close. And there is a good dry camping spot a half mile from the end, which is a great spot to stop for the night because the start of segment 4 is very, very hard. And so stopping early so that you can get an early morning run up the start of segment 4 is a great idea as well. So that's what I mentioned to you all years and years ago. And as Mad Hippies can confirm, segment 3 has all kinds of great camping. This is also a great option for sort of overnights. If you are brand new to backpacking and you're not sure how you're going to do, I know there have been a number of people who've reached out to me and said, listen, I'm interested in backpacking. I don't know where to begin. This is where you begin. Head out there and check out segment 3 because it is a segment that's very approachable. It's on a paved road, so you don't have to drive down a dirt road to get there. It's a great one for testing out a lot of new gear, that kind of thing. Now, here are my new tips for this, or the additional tips, I think is probably a better way to say it. Number one is consider dry camping early. So you do have a couple of water sources early in the segment. Consider dry camping early, and that's a good one specifically because if you are already in the segment and then you wake up early and start, you won't have to contend with the mountain bikers nearly as much. There's some really good spots early in the segment, so you can find some good camping, stay for the night, rest up. It's also important at this point to remember where you're going to be in the hike. In the grand scheme of your adventure, you were brand new. So at this point, you might be 2, 3 days in. So your backpack is still as heavy as it's going to be. You've maybe eaten 2 days of food out of it, and your body is as sore as it's going to be. So this is a good time to sort of slow up your pace, stop, check, make sure you're doing all right. And just keep checking in on yourself to make sure you're in a good space, because if you can make it to Breckenridge, your odds of making it to Durango skyrocket. Most people who don't make it to Durango end up leaving typically by about the end of segment 4 or 5. Most people who aren't going to make it leave pretty early. So that's why this first segment, I'm encouraging starting early and also taking your time and really breaking it up and really slowing up as you go. And Dan Hupp here mentions here starting segment 4, and we're going to talk a lot about segment 4 because that is a segment that is like Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, you start with a really tough one and then head into some of the more beautiful segments as well. So here, there's also great camping near Buffalo Creek. And when I say great camping, I mean great camping near Buffalo Creek. And this one is also great because Buffalo Creek, those campsites are right at the end, right before you get to some really aggressive climbs. So if you stop there and rest up, then you're going to start the next day on some fresh legs. It does mean you will be getting to segment 4, the start of segment 4, a little bit later in the day, but that's probably okay as well. Because again, if you have lots of time to just be patient in your hiking, you're going to make it up there. These are all, again, just meant to get you excited about the trail and meant to get you thinking about it as well. Now, one of the best things you can consider, especially if you're new to hiking, is coordinating a shuttle from the end of the segment for a break. So stopping at the end of segment 3, the start of segment 4. There's a hostel in Bailey. It was called the Linwood Hostel for the longest time. It's now called the Two Bridges Lodge. And on their website, they advertise that they will come and pick you up from here. So you can coordinate a shuttle, go back to the hostel. So maybe 3-4 days in, you can go check in, make sure you're doing well, get a shower, look over your food, maybe send back stuff that's not working, that kind of thing. And this is a really good option because then you come back the next day refreshed, start up on segment 4, and that really increases your contentment and chances of making it through the segment from there. It's just really terrific. So here, the end of segment 3, great access to Bailey. It's about a 8-mile trip down a dirt road. There's also at the Rolling Creek Trailhead, which is the end of the segment. So at the end of segment 3, there's a big parking lot. You'll sometimes have trail magic happening there, but it's also really populated with a lot of day hikers. So if you need to get into Bailey and you haven't coordinated a ride, that's okay. Just try to time your arrival and start walking that forest road. And a lot of the day hikers will be willing to pick you up if you're comfortable getting hitches. And if you're not, you're on a dirt road for 8 miles and you can make it back to Bailey. It's really, really feasible. And there's cheap lodging there, that kind of thing. Well worth it. Segment 3, you're going to love it. There's some challenges, but they all have challenges. So be ready for it. You're going to be in good shape. Did I show the video for segment 3, everybody? I don't know if I did. I think let's take a look at segment 3. So here you notice that we've got a lot of those sort of pine forest here. We're going to see a rock formation here in a second. And the front of it really has a lot of these beautiful rock formations the first few miles. Just really, really incredible. A lot of good camping. You can see there how flat it is. So if you have plenty of water and you can camp, go for it. You start getting into some more lush areas as you go through. So it definitely picks up quite a bit more greenery as you go. And so if you get there to the start of this segment at about 2 in the afternoon, it's worth stopping for a little while and waiting for the sun to go down a little bit, because that sun can be pummeling on the front end, but then at the end, you'll start getting a lot more relief from that sun. That's a buddy of mine named Cheese. He's, if you're out there, Cheese, I hope you're doing well. I haven't talked to you in a little while, but again, segment 3, got a lot to love. And one of the themes that you're going to start to see here is just an increasing amount of beauty in the segment that's sort of obvious beauty. And what I mean by that is you can love segment 2 and that harsh beauty, but the obvious beauty, the stuff where everybody looks and is wowed, really starts happening toward the end of segment 4, and you're going to start to see some of that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about all right, so segment 4, this one is a really cool segment. It is one that can be very challenging because you're going to have the majority of your climbing on the front end. This is sort of the opposite of segment 1 in a lot of respects, where you've got a really steep climb and a hurdle on the front end of it, and then you level off and you're going to be in this big long valley for miles and miles. In fact, you'll have a 6-mile straightaway, kind of like in segment 1 you had a 6-mile straightaway. So here you've got 3,300 feet of elevation gain, 1,400 feet of elevation descent as well. And it is it's just a really, really cool segment, but the front end is very difficult. So what happens is you leave segment 3 and you kind of dip down into this forest road, and then you get to the parking lot, and then almost right away you start up a Jeep road, which you would think Jeep road, this is going to be really nicely graded, and it pretty much is. And then it gets hard really quickly, and you make it to the end of the Jeep road. It's really steep and kind of craggy and rocky, and it's just relentless. And when you get to the top and the end of the Jeep road, you hook to the left, and then it gets really hard, and you start switchbacking your way up. But then when you get to the top of that, you then have this sort of really cool descent down another Jeep road that's a lot gentler. Hook to the right, you're going to hit this really long valley that's super beautiful, that sort of parallels the border of the Lost Creek Wilderness, and you'll have this kind of gentle climb that will continue for about 6 miles. And it's gentle, but it is kind of relentless. So let me make sure that I'm clear about that. It is it's just a really interesting kind of climb. The way I think about it is a little bit like driving to Denver through Kansas, where it's a steady incline that you hardly notice, but because your gas pedal, you have to hit it a little harder. You can feel it kind of wearing on you, and it's a it's a really tough one, kind of mentally if you're not paying attention here. Dodsworth, this is really hilarious. Segment 4 climb is where the Flatlanders start. Questioning your choice of hobbies. I agree with you. It's a tough segment to when you get into that climb, but if I've done it multiple times, you can do it multiple times as well. Let's take a look at that one and kind of get a sense of what we're up against here. So this is segment 4. I've tried to keep these in order as well. So for the most part, the clips are all in order, and you'll kind of get a sense here of the climb, and then you'll get a sense maybe a little bit of the descent, and then that long valley that I mentioned where it all clears out and you parallel the Lost Creek Wilderness. So this is it here. So you kind of start on this. You start out from that parking lot and you head right onto this, and then you head up and you kind of see the Jeep road emerging here where the trees have all been cleared out. You kind of see the 2 tracks there, and then you turn and you start really hoofing it up this difficult climb. And you can see here Cheese is he's making his way. He's a really good hiker, but if he's struggling a little bit, you know that it's a tougher segment there. And then you kind of start leveling off a little bit and you reach the top of that one. And there you go. You hit that big, beautiful valley there. To the right of that is the Lost Creek Wilderness. So basically the tree line is the wilderness border. And then you have this, you can see Cheese there. He's kind of climbing a little bit. And it's beautiful. It's sort of iconic Colorado trail, and it's what I consider in many respects sort of the price of admission. And if you've got your pup with you here, you can say that it's gentle and relentless. The exposure can get to you. And Remy, of course, is Girl Plus Dog Adventures. It's the dog in Girl Plus Dog Adventures, and he hiked the trail back in 2021, did a great job with that one. And he loves every person who's ever walked the planet. So let's talk a little bit about my tips here from the first video. First is be ready for the last half, because you'll hit that climb, and similar to that segment that I mentioned earlier with the Waterton Canyon, where you can be really tired by the time you get to the climb. Same holds true here. So just be ready for it. Know that you want to start kind of checking in with your body again continually. There can be some storms here, so it's kind of nice knowing that the trees are there. You can kind of tuck yourself away if the storms happen. At the start of that valley, there's a great sitting area. There's some sort of campsites put up there with some benches. So not benches that are formal, basically logs that are down. So take a break at the start of the valley and rest up a little bit. And then again, check in on yourself, see how you're feeling. Know that it's okay to be struggling a little bit at this point. That's totally fine. As the Dodsworth points out, you might be questioning whether or not this is a good fit for you. It is. It is 100%. If you've made it this far, you're going to be great. Do not let that really difficult climb in segment 4 discourage you, because I do consider it to be one of the top 10 difficult climbs on the entire trail. So don't let that get you down. And sort of strategically speaking, or sort of in the bigger picture, it makes sense that it would be really hard because it's so early in the hike and it's so low in elevation and hot. It can be really pummeling. Now, let's take a look here. This is my only other segment drone video, but you'll see here that valley, and this is part of what I love about that valley is it is absolutely stunning. It reminds me a lot of what you're going to see later on when you get to the Cochetopa Creek, and so just a really beautiful one. Let's take a peek here at this one. You'll see Cheese and me kind of walking in the center there. I had to cut the sound out, so some of the cuts are meant to match the beat, so forgive me that they don't. But you see the valley there. It's just the trail is really nice. It's beautiful. I mean, it's just a cool one, right? As the Mad Hippies point out there, this makes an incredible fall hike, and I absolutely would love to do it specifically because of all the aspens that are in this segment through that climbing segment as well, or where you do the climb. But it's just stunning. You will see also if you do this segment early, so say you camp for the night at the start of the valley, and you'll know when you're at the start of the valley. If you camp at the start of the valley and then wake up early and start hiking, there's about a 90% chance you're going to see moose in that valley. So pay very specific attention for moose. They're really cool to see, and there are only a handful of spots on the trail where I can pretty well not promise, that's probably too bold, but your chances of seeing moose are pretty high in that valley. I've seen them there multiple times, but I do hike early in the morning, and so that's worth knowing as well. Let's talk about here. This is probably my most specific and one of my favorite tips that I wish I would have included the first time through. Now, at mile 4.7, you're going to come to this sort of hook in the trail, and so the trail is going to kind of cut to the right really hard and kind of climb up 100 feet really steeply. And there's a creek in the elbow, and it's the Craig Creek, 4.7 miles in. And just before the Craig Creek, there are some camping spots you'll see on the right side down this sort of steep embankment. And as you would imagine, they're not great camping spots, but a lot of people choose to stop there. It's this sort of obvious kind of bottleneck spot for people to stop and hike or camp rather, right there at the Craig Creek. But get your water, fill up, and go about a half mile past, and it flattens out in super flat, hundreds of good camping spots right in there. So press on. It's not too hard if you decide to wake up the next morning to go back and get a little more water, or there's plenty of water just past that. So you'll have lots of water throughout the segment. I believe there's water just past that. Double check that in your data book to make sure. But I know there's water as you go over the climb. There are a couple of different spots as well, and there's some really good ones right there. And get ready, because as Dan Hutt points out here, you really start to feel your trail legs kick in shortly thereafter. And so if you're starting to feel discouraged and tired and exhausted, hang in there, because everybody starts getting their trail legs in the next segment or two, and it gets really fun from there. Once you start figuring out, you can do this. There's going to be a moment that will click for all of you where you will say, I doubted myself before, but I can do this. If I can do that climb, I can do any climb in front of me. And that's 100% true. And you're going to do great. So don't get discouraged on those climbs, especially when you get to the other side. Don't ever get to the bottom of a climb. So climb a big climb and then get to the bottom and stay discouraged, because that means you're looking at the wrong thing. You're thinking, man, that was really hard, instead of, man, I just did that. And so focus on your victories and make sure you're really paying attention to where you're doing great stuff, right? And here, be patient on the climb. And if you can, time it with an early morning start. So try to do that start. So if you camp there at just past Craig Creek, that puts you in a great spot, because you'll start with the hardest part of the climb right away and have that knocked out first thing. And then you're going to cruise for 6 to 8 miles through that valley. And so it's a really great way to go to kind of space out the difficult parts. So be patient on it. Take your time. Take lots of breaks. If you have to take a break every 100 feet, take a break every 100 feet. I know I've had to do that in the past, especially if I go through at about 3 in the afternoon when the sun is pummeling. That's okay as well. And as Tangent Trails here points out, if your morale starts dipping, make sure you have a really good bar of chocolate that you can share with other people. Or if you're hiking with friends, it's their job to tell you when it's time to eat chocolate. So chocolate's just such a good morale boost. So if you start getting discouraged, make sure you have a bar of chocolate that's just for those moments when your morale hits a low. I've said it once, I've said it 100 times, and you're going to hear it 100 more if you keep paying attention. And I hope you do. Now here, I mentioned this already, trying to do that valley stretch early is also really cool because of the moose. It's just so fun to see some of those animals that are a little bit more rare in Colorado. There are some spots where you can see plenty of moose in Colorado, and some elk and such. But, on the CT, there are only a handful of spots where they really pop up and are, you just take advantage of that. And those mornings are just terrific when you're in the shade, because in the times whenever it starts getting hot, you're going to wish you had woken up earlier. And again, there will be times when you can wake up a little bit later, but early in the trail is a great time to really practice waking up early, especially if you're an East Coaster, because you already have the advantage of the 2-hour time difference. So waking up at 5 in the morning in Colorado is like waking up at 7 in the morning on the East Coast. And here, just to reinforce that, Mad Hippies point out, plenty of sunlight, go slow, relax, and know you'll get it done. And that's 100% the case. Go slow, know you'll get it done. You might not get it done on the time you wanted to get it done, and that's okay. You're going to get it done. So try to do that stretch early. You're going to be in great shape from there. It's such a cool segment. Once you get into that valley, especially, it's just so spectacular, so cool. I've been there in the afternoon when it's been in lightning storms. That was a little bit eerie, but it also was really cool to see what it looks like then. I've been there early in the morning. It's beautiful. The animals are moving, just really, really cool. It's also, that valley has a lot of good camping spots kind of peppered through. So it's worth kind of thinking about camping in that valley if you're able, because there's so much water. I mean, just tons of water, creeks and tributaries running through. So when you get to that valley, know that you'll have water probably every half mile or so from little streams and creeks. So you don't have to carry any extra water. So you can lighten your pack and kind of start burning some of those miles. So that's segment 4. It is Jekyll and Hyde, but it is which one's the nice one? That's the second one, right? Or maybe it's like April, right? Comes in like a lion and goes out like a lamb. Or is that March? I don't know. Segment 4, it's terrific. You're going to love it. All right, so segment 5, we are drawing to the sort of grand finale here, sort of the finish of it. We're going to talk here about segment 5. This one is 14.6 miles. It's 1,900 feet up, 2,100 feet down. A lot of that happens because you're going down into Kenosha Pass at the very end of this. This is a segment that is jam-packed with aspen groves and aspen trees, which is good to know. Specifically, when you get out there, you're going to start figuring out that aspen trees are terrific for things like blocking wind if it's a really windy day, but it also can be tough because aspen trees block wind if it's a really hot day. They also require a lot of moisture. So when you see aspen trees, they're often in really densely packed dirt and soil that has a lot of moisture, so the humidity can get really hot. So just know that kind of going in. Kind of to Mad Hippie's point earlier, it would also make a really terrific fall hike. So if you're in the area, it's really easy to access as well. So you can get out there and do that segment anytime in the fall and do it as a day hike, especially if you have 2 people to shuttle cars to the start and end of it. So it's a really cool segment. And it's also nice because it's going to mark the sort of end of that first grind where you're then going to head into Georgia Pass. And the next segment is the first time you're going to go up above tree line. So this is the last segment where you will basically start getting glimpses of what it's like above tree line before you actually start crushing it above tree line. So let's take a look here. My first tips when I did this 3 years ago, first is to pack for a stop. And what I meant by that is most people stop somewhere around Kenosha, even if it's just to hitch into Jefferson, which is 4 miles from the Kenosha Pass crossing. And so pack for a stop. So what that means is if you're going to go into town, which I would recommend at this point, even if it's just Jefferson, eat all the snacks you can. Wake up and eat them all, take all your trash and collect it, store it separately, get all your electronics you want to charge and put those on top so that when you get in, you don't have to do what they call a garage sale, which is when you empty out your whole backpack. Typically, it's in a place where you don't want to have to empty your whole backpack. So, kind of making sure that you are spending a little bit of that time preparing for the next day when with all the great stuff coming. You can also go from there into the town of Fairplay. That one's not super hard to catch a hitch, it's just farther. So I think it's about 19 miles from the trail to Fairplay. There are hotels in Fairplay where there are not in Jefferson. You can also, from that hostel there in Bailey, they will run shuttles from there as well, and I believe it's about $25. So if you are concerned about hitching, that hostel in Bailey is a really great option, specifically because they'll come pick you up at Kenosha and drop you back off at Kenosha. And so I really recommend it. It's also a great place for trail magic. And so there are often people out there with trail magic. When I went there, there were a couple of folks doing trail magic, or there was one folks with her dog doing trail magic. And it was, she brought cupcakes that were so delicious, I decided to marry her. So Kenosha Pass is just a terrific spot to go for a lot of different reasons. You're going to get to this sort of campground. There is camping there that's first come, first serve. So if you have cash, you want to take that because it is self-register there at the campground. I don't know the cost of it, but typically what I do if I'm on a backpacking trip is I try to carry about $50, and maybe 15 of it is in ones, or 10 is in ones, and then fives, and kind of break it up so that if you get there and it's $12, you don't have to pay for you don't have to pay more because they can't make change. Next is review your gear setup. So think about all the stuff you have. And if it's not in that list of the 10 essentials, it might be time to start thinking about sending it home. Now, the post office there in Jefferson is small, and I believe they only operate half the day. So if you're not there by noon, you might be stuck with it. But this is a great time to start thinking about what you can send home. And even if you don't get to send it home here, knowing that, you know what, maybe you brought, say, a Kindle, and at this point you're thinking, all right, well, I haven't used the Kindle yet because I've been too tired. So in the next segment 6 will take you all the way to Breckenridge. If I don't use it by Breckenridge, I'm sending it home because I'm 20% of the way there and I haven't used it once. It's not worth the wait. It's also a great time to think about gear that you might want to change or adjust because, again, in Breckenridge, Dillon coming up, you will have an opportunity there to stop by the REI. There are a couple of outdoor stores there as well. So it's a good one. Now, for those of you who are maybe you've got a little more money and you're able to spend and splurge a little bit, if you do go into town, say Jefferson, that's a great time to look at 2 days and go ahead and book a hotel in Frisco, or book a hotel in go ahead and book a hotel in Breckenridge, or that hostel in Breckenridge. There is the Bivy Hostel in Breckenridge, is one of the nicest hostels I've ever stayed in. It is worth knowing, though, they don't answer phones. So if you need to make any changes, you're kind of out of luck there, but it is a terrific hostel. Now, start thinking about sending home that used gear. That's what I mentioned to you all 2-3 years ago. Now let's talk a little bit about some of my tips here. And the first one is to avoid camping right at the start of segment 5. There are a number of camping spots right there at the start of segment 5. They're typically really full, very small, and there are a ton of cat holes everywhere. So it's such a sort of pinch point for users there that you are better off picking up some water and moving on down the trail. Or alternately, you can grab some water, and there's a forest road near there, so you can go down the forest road a little ways, and there are a lot of camping spots along that forest road, and then just come back in and hop back on the trail the next morning. A lot of good camping through here, but that start of segment 5 is not good camping. Typically speaking, you're going to end up on a slope or sharing cat holes with somebody, and that's not anything anybody wants. Now, there is sometimes cell service available, particularly for those Verizon folks out there at the top of the second rise. And you'll know when you're at the top of the second rise. There are 2 big climbs in the segment, and there's at the top of that segment rise, or the second rise, you're going to be able to see Jefferson off to the left. It's at the top of that is where you want to turn on your cell phone if you're trying to get messages in and you don't have a Zoleo or an InReach or something of the sort. Now, I'm not sure here if you all know this or not, but if you do get into Jefferson, which, as the Mad Hippies point out, there are a ton of locals who go there to Kenosha Pass. It's on a U.S. highway. I believe it's 285, passes right through there. That U.S. highway is very easy to get a hitch in. It's really busy, so be careful when you cross it because it is kind of a blind crossing. I think they're working on a bridge over it for hikers in the future, but that's years and years away. Now, if you get into the town of Jefferson, which is about 4 miles to the south of the trail, there's a market there called the Jefferson Market, and it's incredible. It's one of the most welcoming places for hikers on the entire trail. Just to give you a picture of what things were like last year when I got there, I had my backpack, walk in, and you never know, right? You never know how a place is going to respond to hikers because there are hikers who misbehave or have a sense of entitlement or cause a ruckus. There are those folks, not typically on the CT, but there are folks like that. So you don't know if maybe they've had bad experiences with hikers in the past. And anyway, I have my backpack on, and there's a woman working there, and she walks outside for something, sees me, and says, "Come on in. We've got this place to leave your bag. We've got plugs over there to charge up. We've got food here. Here's how you order. Here's how you pay." The whole thing was just phenomenal. So when you get into Jefferson, not only do I recommend going there to the Jefferson Market, but I also recommend here that it's a great idea at that market to take good care of them, right? So just be kind to them, be nice to them. If they do ask for it, I don't think they ask for a tip, but if there is an opportunity to tip, which I believe there is, be generous if you're able. And if you do see Lee like I did, Lee, I think if I'm remembering correctly, you might have been just off of maybe the Florida Trail hike. Was that you that I met? I think you were doing some pretty incredible hikes and maybe even a sailing trip or two, if I'm remembering correctly. But just terrific. It was great to see you, Lee. Hope you're doing well there. And apologies if I'm confusing you with someone else, but I do remember sitting in, I think you had a bag of chips with you, if I'm remembering correctly. But that market is just terrific. Sorry, Lee. My apologies. But I do remember meeting you, and I remember where you were sitting. I was in the booth, and you were at the table there to the right. So Jefferson Market is absolutely incredible. Definitely stop there and be kind to those folks. Let's make sure that they still stay welcoming to us because the best thing we can do for future hikers is to take good care of the folks that are already taking care of us. So that covers it here for segment 5. I hope that's been helpful to you all. I don't know if I actually shared. Did I share my video of segment 5 with you all? Let's go ahead and take a peek at that one real quick. You're going to see those aspens that we were talking about. This is a little bit of a time lapse here, and this is at the end of a really tough climb. So you'll know this spot when you get there. It's the end of the first climb. And so when you get here, you're going to know it. It's just absolutely beautiful, but it can be a really tough one. And then you can see here where the climb continues. And then you're going to hit lots and lots of those aspen groves through here as you make your way to Kenosha. You'll start seeing day hikers somewhere in the vicinity here. They're going to start making, their way up to the top of that rise. You're not going to see them past that first rise. Typically, they'll go from Kenosha to the top and then kind of turn around and go to their car. Now, if you are looking for a ride, that's a great place to start drumming up conversations with folks and saying, "Hey, I'm hiking the Colorado Trail." And then as you talk to them, eventually, a lot of times they'll offer to give you a ride to wherever you need to go because they have their car there. And especially you'll feel more comfortable if you meet some people and get to feel them out as well. So that's segment 5. It's absolutely terrific. And it is heading into segment 6, which is one of my absolute favorites of the first 100 miles or so. It's stunning, has some really great stuff going on it. So here's what's going to happen from here. I'm going to be doing these live streams. We'll tackle maybe 5 segments at a time, maybe 4 if this is too much, if we're diving too deeply. You get to let me know. Send me messages on Instagram if you have questions. That's at Backcountry Champion. I think I can maybe even put that one up for you here. Let's see if I've got that one. Yep. So you can hit me up on Instagram at Backcountry Champion if you have questions. I'll do my best to answer them. There are also some other folks here. You can talk to Matt Hippies. They will help you out with a lot of great information. They can help you sort out a lot of that. So don't overlook them as a resource as well. Girl Plus Dog Adventures completed the trail back in 2021. She's particularly helpful for those folks who are either hiking solo as women or hiking with a dog. So knowing places that are pet friendly or knowing shuttlers that are pet friendly, that kind of thing, or the challenges that will be presented to you with the dog. So we have a community here. I mean, we've got a lot of folks who are ready to help out. Reach out to us as you have those questions if there's something that we need to cover. we'll do our best to do so. So basically what we'll do is we'll have segments like this and we'll go back through so that we can start updating those tip videos so people who are going through can have newer information. And if there's something that you need to know, please let me know and I'm happy to do so. I want to thank you all for spending some of your Sunday night with me here. This is just one of my favorite things to do. I'm so grateful for everybody who takes a little bit of time out of your day to spend time with me here. It's really just the best. You all are terrific. I thank you all in the comments there. I want to thank Brennan. Thanks for joining. Thanks, Girl Plus Dog Adventures and Mad Hippies, of course, Salmon. Great to see you and Huck and Jody. I mean, it goes on and on. Elderberry as well. So apologies if I didn't catch your name there in this. Lee, great to see you as well. Thank you all for everything. I'm so grateful to be able to engage with you all. Hope you have a great week. Let me know if I can help in any ways. You're getting ready to launch on the CT this year. Take care, everybody. I'll talk to you soon.